Hey there, welcome in. My name's Josh. This is the EmbodiedJosh podcast, and I have my good friend with me here today, Wes Noyes. He is a freelance illustrator located out in Colorado. And I wanted to bring him on and talk to him because up until this point, I've only had concept artists on the show and different types of concept artists at that. So Wes is an illustrator, and I wanted to hear what creating art has been like from his perspective in 2021 in the internet when concept art and all these art terms can be kind of vague. So, Wes, hi, thanks for being here. Thanks for taking the time.
Hey, thanks, Josh. I really appreciate you taking time of your day to have me. I love being here, and it's good to be on the show.
So, if you could just, I guess to start off, what is your day-to-day like as a freelance illustrator? What does that look like to you? And like, what do you like about it? Like, give us a glimpse into what a day in the life of Wes would be.
Day in the life of Wes would be freelance illustration. That's a good question because it's unlike any other. Freelance in and of itself is unlike any other profession, any other creative profession. I've experienced working in studios and being on my own as well. So I would say it's very different. But a day in the day, a lot of the times, honestly, you're talking with people. You're reaching out. You're selling yourself online. You're doing some marketing. You're responding to emails. Not to say that you can't be drawn all day. I'm drawn a lot of the time when I'm working, but a lot of it's like some of it's a lot like the just keeping track of accounts and stuff. So I'll probably wake up in the morning, look at my emails, see what's come up, I'll scroll through social media, see if I got any like tags or anything. But just trying to network and connect with people. Honestly, that's been huge for me. It's kind of led to some opportunities that I've had up until now. Not to say that I'm some super successful like freelance illustrator or
Sure,
anything.
sure.
Like I've got some work that's published, but I'm still learning. It's probably something you'll hear me say a couple of times, and I'm definitely I'm constantly learning stuff as I'm going. So
Yeah.
that's kind of like a day. Just responding to emails, working, going to bed, social media. That's kind of like my workplace. So
So then,
yeah,
when okay, so you mentioned networking. Everybody talks about networking, or you go to like in college, or you go to like mixer events, and they always say go network, right? Like go schmooze. And so like I like we both were in film school for a minute, but in film school especially, it was all networking, and it was like, what does that even mean? Like go and like try to make shallow surface level connections with like people and try to be their friend, like and outside, like it's COVID now, so it's everything's the internet. So in some ways, networking and social media can be seen easier. But like, what does networking actually look like practically, and how how do you do that in a way that doesn't feel slimy and like that feels like natural or organic? Like, because like yeah, because at the end of like you need money, you need clients, you need to get the bread, but how do you like how what do you do? You mentioned social media a lot. Is it Instagram? Is there one platform in general? What is if
sure.
somebody wanted to try to get into freelance artwork, what are some techniques and what are some things that you found successful in being able to actually get clients and actually draw?
Sure. For in my experience, what's been huge for me is actually attending conventions,
Ooh.
whether it be your Comic Con or if you're into illustration, the SCBWI, the Society of Children's Books Writers and Illustrators. That's a huge guild for illustration. You've got some really top-notch illustrators, Max Greek, totally blanking on his name. Um, shoot. Um, I don't want to name just one name, dude. It's been a hot minute since I've been active, but you got some high level illustrators in there, and then so you can connect not only with other like artists, but more importantly, you're connecting with writers.
Hmm.
If you're wanting to get into the children's book area, but conventions are a great way to connect with other artists and collaborate, even other writers as well. If you're into the comic book scene, but honestly, I think what's been huge for me in terms of connecting with other people is honestly um, calling. Just doing some cold calls or sending a cold email. That's been huge for me. I've been able to connect with some people I would never thought I'd be able to reach out to through social media. Mainly because through social media, it's not that like their fault or it's not because they just don't want to listen to you, but some of the more popular creatives out there, they just have so many notifications that their lives are busy. They don't really have time to like message every single DM. But emails, from I also come from the marketing world, so emails are like it's like one of the most important marketing tool that any studio or any individual could ever use. It's a very powerful asset. Most people look at and still use email very regularly, more than even social media. So I would say emails have been huge for me. I've been able to connect with some artists up in Six More Vodka, the studio that has been commissioned to work with Riot Games on some of their most recent concept art and get feedback from them and connect with them. And that's also how I landed my first. That's how I landed my first internship at a game studio up here in Colorado, doing a game for Where the Water Tastes Like Wine, which is an indie game based off of the American folklore stuff. So I got to do some illustration work from there too. But honestly, I would say networking. It's not super slimy. It really isn't, because when you're going out into the world, everybody's looking for something to help them elevate their own platform. So if you're looking for like actual friendships, that's a whole different conversation. But if you're looking for business relationships, everybody's out there to like want to establish and build up their rapport and their clientele, and that's okay. That's just how it works. Everybody wants to like work with better and creative people. And so I honestly think when networking, creatives have the advantage. So that's kind of like it's been the mindset I've been having, especially with some of my business coaches, helping me out with that front in wanting to establish relationships. So I don't know if I answered your question directly.
No, you did. It sounds, the thing that I like the most of what you're saying is that basically identifying that it's a business relationships and professional relationships are very separate from like your real friends, and in an age and culture where influencers like on authenticity is so hot right now. Like, oh yeah, he's my friend. He's like, is he your friend or is he like a professional like business like partner? Like once you get into the land of the internet and like content creation, that line like socially of who's a colleague, who's a peer, and then who's like an actual like friend can get kind of blurred. And I think that I think that being aware of that is something that everybody has to do for themselves, and like take inventory of their own relationships and decide who they want to elevate or put into what circle of their life. And you just very clearly viewing it just through a business lens, and then also realizing that you are not going around begging for work, but that you're bringing a skill set that can help other people, and having confidence in yourself and what you bring to the table. You said that that creators have an advantage. I think that recognizing that, it sounds like, you can correct me if I'm wrong, I want to ask you about this, but it sounds like you're saying that recognizing that you have value that you bring to the table, and you can be confident in the skills that you have, and know that you are desirable, and that they would have a reason to want to work with you. You're not going around begging for somebody to give you a chance, or somebody to like, I don't know, like you talk as if there's a level of like self-respect and confidence that you have going into this, and you're not just sliding into people's DMs, but even just like being intentional with how you handle and present yourself online, in a way that just seems a lot more confident, and that
keep going.
No, that was it. I just like that can be hard, to be confident in your skills. I mean, I feel like that, people say be humble and be hungry, right? And you mentioned before that you're still learning. And I feel like that there's, tying this into, artists charging less for their work, right? And people saying you should charge this much per hour for an artwork for commissions, or this or that. And people, underpaying themselves and undervaluing themselves. If somebody is wanting to be a freelance illustrator, right? If somebody wants to make money doing art, how do they breach that gap of, you know, basically, in short, how do they get that confidence? And how do they know what they're worth? How do they know how to walk into these like networking type situations without risking? Because if it were me, I wouldn't want to look like an idiot thinking that I'm hot stuff when I'm not, right? And walking with my my chest puffed
Sure.
out, thinking I'm amazing, that I should deserve all these things. But at the same time, I don't want to be super insecure and charge like $2 an hour because I'm just so happy and hungry to get anything. So like,
Sure.
what advice could you give artists who are trying to figure out like their own, like that confidence meter for themselves of how good am I? How should I handle myself? How much should I charge? Like, what advice would you give somebody who's wanting to actually start making relationships and starting to generate income doing freelance art on the internet?
Yeah, sure. No, that's a great question. Something that I've been thinking about very recently too, because a lot of young artists, a lot of aspiring and prospects that want to get into the illustration, the concept art, the comic book world, along with any other, like if you wanted to go into movies or TV show, whatever. I think a lot of artists, they put too much emphasis on placing their value on the monetary aspect of their work. They look at some artists like, wow, he charges $200 for commission and his artwork's great. You see these commissions on Twitter, on Reddit, or on Instagram, and you see like, man, I'm not able to charge that amount. Like my artwork kind of sucks. It's just not that great. But like honestly, that's like that's such a hard way to sell yourself when you focus on, how can I get better and sell my product at a higher price? How can I sell my creative? How can I like sell myself at a higher value, the level that I wish that I could be at? And so my answer to that is, well, here's the truth: is that like there's always going to be somebody who can do it cheaper. You kind of need to strip yourself from that badge and be like, you know what, I create something super cool, and I have this awesome stellar design. Because the truth is, someone on Fiverr could probably do it, like can mimic your style at like for $5. My encouragement is, don't sell yourself based off your style or your skill set or your technical prowess, but sell yourself on the way that you think, because there's nobody in the world that can think like me. I provide creative value and solutions and answers in a way that's only unique to me, and that's been game changing, because people, a lot of people that work with creatives, that commission creatives, whether it's studio execs or authors or writers, or even storyboard artists who are looking for creatives to kind of polish up their work or create a finished product. They're looking for something great, but what they really want to hear is if you work well with a team, if you provide creative, if you provide a solution that is incredibly unique, that only you can do, and that you kind of and that you land deadlines too. That's another third one that's important. So yeah, work well with team, creative thinking, and hitting deadlines are probably the three most important things when working with any type of client. So that's really only going to put you in a good situation. So I think that would be my advice, man. It's just that's where the confidence comes from, I'd say.
Yeah. Wow. Marketing yourself off of the way you think compared to your style. That's like even like taking it like a level deeper, because like as your thoughts change, your style can change. Like how you view the world will change, how you articulate that visually. That's a man. I'm still processing that, like, because that applies to more than just art, right? That's like that's bigger than that.
Yeah.
Because shoot, like, Man, that's a good word. That's hot. All right. So then, okay. So then, if you're marketing yourself off of how you think, as opposed to your style or your price range, or like what you, because again, you can always be outsourced somewhere else. How do you then refine your thinking in a way to be valuable? Like, and I guess this can be, I'm taking this from an angle, from an artistic perspective. So like, you're thinking of like how you look at a composition, how you look at values, how you look, like how you think artistically. What are some ways you think that people could, change the way that they see things, or think? Like for me, a big one was realizing, perspective and ellipses. Like if you move an ellipse around, it can see like it's rotating as opposed to like 2D,
Yep.
right? Like those mental clicks that just kind of happen. How do you do that? How can you shift your focus to change your thinking compared to changing your style? Like that's really profound, and I really like that. But I'm like, I would wonder how I could try to refine my thinking in a way to be more marketable, or to be a
Sure.
better artist. And I don't know what immediate action steps I could take to go and change that. Do you have any like advice? Like what would you recommend? Like how do you work on that?
So that's a good question. I would say the first thing that you need to do um, is find an artistic coach. You need to find somebody who is willing to, who's maybe at a higher level than you, and it's something that you want to learn, and ask them very politely. Either you shoot them an email, kind of do some stalking. You know, the way that I've worked it is like, hey, I sent them a screen cap of something that they made recently. It's like, I really love how you did this. And then just kind of go into like, hey, I want to learn like more about this aspect that you did in this piece. Would you mind sharing some insight on what your thinking is on this?
Wow.
And so that's how you kind of peel back some of the layers in like some of the artists that you really like. You realize like, well, in order to elevate my way of thinking, I need to first think how like what works. I need to think about like take with something that works, something that's already like published and incredibly liked. Take an artist that's has a great community and has a great following back. It's
Mm-hmm.
like, wow, the way their way of thinking is working. Like what is it about it? So I'll stalk their Instagram. I'll scroll down and be like, ooh, like I love this piece. You know, maybe I'll shoot him a direct message, or I'll shoot him an email, and maybe he'll get back to me, maybe he won't. But just kind of go in there, very lightheartedly, not super serious, but just
Yeah, you're not try harding.
just
You're not sweaty. You're not
no,
like begging, but you're trying to play it cool. You're trying to pretend like it's whatever if he responds to you or not. But like when
well,
you're
no,
sorry,
you
go
just want to
ahead.
be respectful about, you just want to be, it's fine. You just want to be respectful about it because, they've put in a lot of work into what they've created. And skill is a very personal thing. The way
Mm,
that you go about learning something is unique to your own self. So the best way for you to elevate your skill set is to figure out the different ways that you can learn how to rotate an ellipses, or to figure out your own way how to understand depth of field, foreground, middle ground, background, how
mm,
to lay out a composition. You need to like always equip yourself with artists who are above you, or who are adjacent to you, and figure out how they're learning, just so you can better learn how to take your own next step. There's a book out. There's a book out right now. Well, it's been published for a little bit. It's called "Steal Like an Artist."
mm,
I don't
mm-hmm.
know. I don't
Yeah.
know if I'm sure. I think we've talked about it, in the community for a little bit. But um, essentially, to steal like an artist means you're taking you're taking you're stealing from everybody, but you're filtering it so that you take what you like from from not just one artist, but from two, three, four, five, six artists that you like.
Mm,
Um, and that's how you kind of establish value to your own style. And on top of what I just talked about with your skill, that's how you now essentially have laid out a huge framework to work within to build up
mm.
based off of your community of artistic coaches, and then stealing the style from different artists. Yeah, quote unquote
Yeah.
stealing. But essentially you're attributing inspiration and funneling it through your own artwork, and so that just kind of like helps you, that puts you on a strong platform for you to like grow, but also to actually provide depth in your work, because truth is, creative directors, employers, they're looking at your work and like, is this guy thinking? Is this girl thinking about her work? They're not looking at the sheen or the polish. They're looking at for anatomy. They're looking for posing and posture. They're looking for correct proportions, and if they understand composition or perspective, that's a huge one. So mastering the basics of art of a simple shape is huge when you're
Yeah.
looking for work.
So when you DM these people, when you email them, asking if they could break down their thought process for you on the specific part of the piece, which I think is really nice, by the way, because you're giving them every opportunity to respond to you. Instead of just taking the entire piece and being like, hey, tell me how you made this, you're making it super easy and specific by being, hey, this fabric fold right here and this sheen is hot. How did you do that? Right? As opposed to, because that takes less effort for somebody to answer and less
Yeah.
time, compared to, which again fits into being the respectful thing, like you said, compared to just hitting them randomly, hey, help me, right? Like, so, and that also shows some effort from you to put into that conversation. But like with these cold calls that you're doing, would you like, does that work? That seems too good to be true. I mean, that takes balls, because I would be kind of scared to
Sure.
ping people and ask that. But like, have you actually gotten a decent amount of like responses and traction from asking creative specifically on those little like sections?
Yeah, honestly, I think I've probably done it 10 times, and out of I think I've gotten 8 responses back out of the 10
That's an
times. It,
80% return. That's insane. 8 out of 10
yeah,
will
no,
responded to you.
yeah, I mean, it depends on who you ask. Like,
Sure.
there are going to be some, it depends on the personality. Um, and I don't think it works with everybody. Maybe I'm lucky, maybe I'm not. But
Yeah.
I would say, as long as you're being respectful, if you're being specific and you're not bombarding them with questions, like just ask one
Mm.
question, because you can always ask a different artist the next question that you want. But as
Mm.
soon as you open up dialogue and make it more of a conversation, um, that's where it actually becomes more of a friendship that you can connect and network with.
And now it's back.
Because
Now we're back to networking, and
exactly,
that's really profound, because you're right. Like, if you ask one question on a very specific part of their piece, they're more inclined to just shoot back one answer to that one question. And then you can maybe try to keep the conversation going from there. But typically, it sounds like you just take that kernel, like, thank them for it, and then, like, be content with that. Like, how many of those, like, were you able to, like, go back and, like, have a back and forth from this? Or is it typically you ask a question, they respond, and then that's it?
yes. There was it's very difficult. Yeah, it depends on the person.
Yeah.
If they're generous enough with their time to actually want to like go back and forth, I've had that happen like maybe once or twice when
Okay.
that was really helpful.
Yeah.
So it's not often, because at the end of the day, they've
Yeah.
got work to do, and
And that's more
you've
rare.
got work
Yeah.
to do, and it's still, again, remember, it's not an actual friendship yet. Just because they respond to you, they're not your friend. They're just wanting to be courteous and respect back your message, the time that you took to type out and proofread that respectful question, or that you're just like, hey, I love the way that your colors, like, here's where I'm at, like, what's something that what's a bit of advice or some insight that you could share with me on how to understand color better.
Mm.
Sometimes they're like, hey, watch this YouTube video, and it's like this very obscure 300 views YouTube video that's a hidden gem within like the YouTube algorithm.
Yeah.
But it's like, it's gold. Sometimes they'll actually send you a detailed message. Sometimes you won't get a response at all. But again,
Yeah.
just be respectful. Ask 1 or 2 questions. Don't expect them to answer every single one of your questions. And take, like what you said, take that little kernel of wisdom and just move forward with it. And don't question it. Don't try to debate or argue with them. Just thank them for their time.
Oh God.
Oh please, I've
Could
seen
you
it. I have my
imagine? Are you seeing that? Why
well,
would
like
you do that? Hey,
well, here's
how
the
did you
thing.
do this? They respond, actually, you're wrong. It's like,
Well, you would think that's silly, but I think it comes from like a good intent to like, you're trying to be open with
uh-huh,
your work.
uh-huh,
But like if the artist provides feedback and criticism and
mm-hmm,
like constructive criticism on your work,
mm-hmm.
there's almost like an attack that the questionee like feels.
Mm-hmm. Sure,
Like
yeah.
I just opened myself to this professional, this
Uh-huh.
prestigious artist, and now he's kind of like he said something a little giant, little
Yeah.
jab, not and it could feel tempting to want to like respond to that,
Justify why your thinking was the way that you did. I get that. Yeah.
yeah.
It sounds like I must have missed this before, but it sounds like when you're pinging these people with the very specific one or two question inquiry on their piece, you're including a sample of your own work, so they see where you're at currently. Is that
Um,
correct or no?
sometimes,
Sometimes.
um,
Okay.
sometimes I do. Sometimes I just send them a message of their own work,
Got it.
say like, hey, I really like it. This looks good about it. I really enjoyed this specific piece. How did you get to that level?
Yeah.
Make them talk about themselves. Everybody's wanting to talk about themselves.
Mm.
If people enjoy it, it's easier to start a conversation. So when it's less about like you and more about them, they'll respond with more information. They'll give you a lot more insight onto what they were thinking when they're creating the piece. And then after they responded to you, you can kind of like jump in with your work, maybe depending on the
Depending.
conversation
Yeah.
or
Mm-hmm.
what you feel. You can jump in and be like, hey, this is where I'm at. Like, what are your thoughts on what you just based on what you just said? Like, I wanted to get to where I'm at A, you're at B. How do I get to B? And then that's where they can respond and you start that conversation. So make sure you're letting them talk about themselves first. That's been a tactic that's helped me in establishing professional relationships that way.
Yeah. And that's also like it's yeah, it's just it's good sense. And that's something that yeah, I mean you learn with time. The internet again, it's odd with people's again relationship dynamics, like just circling back to that, like it's so different with relationships, like or even with content creators. In some circles the viewers feel like they're entitled to more because their viewer or their subscription empowers the creator to have the platform that they do, so they should have they're indebted to their viewers or their followers or their whatever. And people's view of relationships on the internet seem to be really varied and very different compared to in real life. So I think that articulating everything that you have with basically just cultivates healthy, respectful, like courtesy and like boundaries, I think is really helpful to help people not put their foot in their mouth and actually increase the chances of getting a response from somebody that they want to talk to. That's really cool.
Yeah.
You mentioned, I want to circle back to something else you said earlier. You were mentioning before, and this is I'm going to harp on this a bit because everybody talks about it, so I want to hear your perspective.
Yeah.
Everybody says do the fundamentals, right? You need to
Sure.
focus on your fundamentals. Um, what does that mean? Like, again, everybody knows what it means, but like, how can you do that in a way to increase your vocabulary, to increase your your proficiency without just hating your life, right? Like, so you and I, we've been friends for a bit. You've been involved on my art journey for a couple of years now, actually. And I have the tendency to just focus on drills, and that's like all I do.
Sure.
And I've had to like balance it with like trying to do other work or like more fun work, but it's like what is your relationship? And you say that you're still learning, you're still improving, right? How
Yeah.
do you balance doing drills? Like, what's your headspace for that while still being able to enjoy what you're doing and move on and progress? Like, art isn't all rainbows and sunshine and roses, and you're gonna have to actually grind a bit. But how do you balance that grind in a way that's sustainable that can have you still enjoy what you're doing and still improve?
Yeah. So I'd say the first thing is if you're going into it with the mentality of saying that it's a grind, you are already losing.
Mm.
You're already fighting against yourself, and I would definitely say don't. There's no need to grind this life. The art journey is not an RPG where you're trying to level up to level 20 so you can get X amount of commissioners, beat the gym and then advance. The art,
Mm.
it just doesn't work like that. It's not linear.
Mm.
Your art journey is going to be very different compared to you know you know Jenny over there, or Sam over there. Like their art journey is going to look very different. Some people are running straight for a while, but then maybe a couple of years pass by and then they're doing pottery, or maybe a couple of years while they're stopped drawing and they're doing more writing. um so when I say practice and drill and do drills and the fundamental, like I come from an athletic background, so I'm used to running miles and miles every day. So in terms of like the word grinding, like I get that, I get the mentality behind it. I understand why we use the word grinding.
Mm-hmm.
It just really means just doing drills back to back and understanding the basics and doing a ton of research on why we're doing, being intentional instead of we're being mindful, not mindless when we draw. So
Mm.
um, I think understanding the basics is great. Don't take me wrong, but it's okay to just take a step back and maybe learn something new. That's been my, because I think what we're kind of talking about is like how do we avoid art block?
Yeah.
Like how do we avoid those slumps of those sloths of time where we're like, oh man, I can't draw right now, but I need to. I would say don't fight it. Don't draw. Go learn something new. Download download Sculptress, which is a free 3D sculpting um, software that ZBrush offers, and practice doing some 3D stuff. Do something new. Um, Become a better artist by increasing your capabilities. You'll still grow as an illustrator, or as in your drawing profession
Mm.
if you're learning how to sculpt in 3D. I've gone months without drawing, and I've learned something new in the 3D world. And I've come back to drawing and only realized that, wow, I've gotten better from not drawing for 3 months. Like just critically thinking about how things move in the 3D world has helped me. Likewise, I've had friends who've drawn for a long time, have been burnt out. They've done more writing, and in return, after years of writing, they've come back to drawing, and their drawings have never been better. Like almost instantly, they picked it back up again, and their drawings are more detailed. Their characters have more depth to them because they've spent years and months learning how to write a character, how to um, establish them in a world and with context, and so they attribute that knowledge into drawing, and it translates very well. So when I say like I would remove saying always draw and replace it with always be creative. Just
Mm.
be creative in your full capabilities. Cook if you want to. If you feel burned on drawing or with sculpting, go and cook something. Like learn something that you want to learn. That's most drawers aren't drawers. Most drawers are creative. Um,
Mm.
Most creatives like drawing, but they're not. They shouldn't restrict themselves to that. Sometimes the best drawers are probably the next Gordon Ramsays. Who knows? Don't just focus yourself on one lane of your creative potential. Everything's gonna like mesh together in a way that will surprise you if you let it. You're creative enough to connect the dots. That's what we love about creating, is that we're connecting dots between themes, ideas, stories, characters, and creating something interesting. That's why we love shows like Avatar. That's why we love shows, like Sherlock Holmes or Avengers, or we like these huge stories because they connect the dots, and we want to like do something like that, and you can, that's my
Mm.
encouragement to you guys, is that you can. It's not going to look like Jenny or Sam, in
Yeah.
terms of what you produce, but it's going to be something great. You just need to you need to open yourself up more to the potential possibilities, and just being open to the idea, maybe I'm not a concept artist. Maybe I do illustrations for food magazines because I love illustrating food because I love cooking. I don't know.
Yeah.
Maybe you shouldn't be a concept artist for video games. Maybe you should be doing illustrations for video game guides and compiling and adding on to illustrations from and assets from game studios and do something like what Black Horse does. Who knows?
Yeah.
You got to take time to think about it, because creatives, their best tool set is their brains, is their thinking. Going back to the critical thinking.
I was going to bring it. I was noticing a theme there where, because you said at the very beginning, don't market yourself based off of your style, market yourself off of how you think. And if you make that pivotal shift, you all of a sudden, as you just articulated so well, you have the freedom to do other creative pursuits, because it's all going back to the same place, which is your brain, which is how you view the world, your life experiences. And as a creative, because we're using artist and creative almost synonymously, like, it will inevitably come back and be reflected in the work that you create, because it's all in that creative family. And I think that that's really profound, because even, when I started learning, you say that maybe you don't want to be a concept. I started off doing concept art, as you know, and it was just the whole Eitan Zahn and Naughty Dog style photo bash, hyper, pseudo realism shtick. That was it. Photo bash, 3D, do it. And
I remember,
it's taken me 3 years now, 4 years, to realize that I like hyper simplified, cute, chibi, low saturated, like comic style art. And I didn't know that was allowed at the time, right? Because like that's like, or even like I did environment art, then I did characters, then I did so all these different things. I was not linear at all, and I was feeling this pressure of like, like, oh, I'm falling behind, or oh, I'm not where I'm supposed to be. But if you realize, like you've said, that if your greatest asset is your life experiences and your creative thinking and your ability to problem solve and put together creative solutions to these creative problems, and that's your asset, and that's your brain, and that's your style, and that's what you bring to the table as a freelance X or as an employee of whatever creative studio, like that's your asset, it really takes a lot of pressure off of you, of feeling like, oh, I don't want to draw, but I feel like I should. I feel like that really takes the pressure off of the I feel like I should part of that dilemma, and lets you almost, in a way, trust yourself to learn and improve instead of feeling like you won't. In other words, trust that your life experience has value. Because I feel like that a lot of people's like, oh, my life is boring. I don't care about me. Like, I'm not all that interesting. And it's very easy, I feel, and much more common for artists to have lower self-esteem. And even asking for feedback, like groveling, begging, like trying, like such a low, like, and copycat syndrome and like, what is it? Imposter syndrome, like, is so rampant everywhere. It's like, and nobody feels like, especially when you're young, when you're a teenager, when you're in college, and your identity is like all of it, not just your artistic identity, but like who you are as a person, and realizing that who you are as a person directly impacts your art. It's no wonder that people are trying to cram themselves into specific styles or paths instead of trusting their life experience to actually meaningfully contribute to what they create. And I think that takes balls. And because there's inherent in what you're saying is a fundamental level of patience, because living life takes time. And I feel like that is difficult to accept when you feel like you're on a timeline to get a job out of college, or, land at your studio by the time you're 20 or 21 or 22. And I felt this way. I felt like I wasn't allowed to meander. I wasn't allowed to cook if I didn't want to draw. I wasn't allowed to go do something else because I had to focus on this linear path. But ironically, I say I felt like I wasn't allowed to, but that's exactly what I did. I still did. I still like, right. I'm not as good at any one particular area of my artistic journey as I perhaps wish that I was. But instead I went really wide. So I have a bunch of experiences instead that filter in. And I was feeling kind of bad about it. But even now talking to you, you're making me feel good about myself. I'm like, oh wow, like all those meandering journeys, like, wow, that's gonna fit into my art someday. That's gonna fit into my, it's my creative problem solving
Yeah.
and my creative ability to
Hmm.
think that's valuable in the long term. And yes, in the short, like what you're able to output artistically matters as well. But your framing on this topic is really unique. It frees up a lot.
Yeah, you need like as an artist, you already have enough pressures, and all those pressures come from yourself. The biggest opponent to a creative is most likely um, our own heads. I
Mm.
know it's a you have to have a strong mental game if you're going to be in this industry. And so in my experience though, you know there's just like this stigma that the the creative artistic drawing world, whatever you want to call it, is incredibly competitive, and it's saturated with artists,
Mm.
and it's impossible to break through. And I honestly disagree with that. I don't think there are a ton of good artists, but there are hardly any great artists.
Mm.
There is a there is a huge gap and a huge need for great artists. And believe it or not, it's what makes a great artist isn't just their technical and their skill level.
Mm.
It's more than just that. And I would say it to also answer that, whatever makes a great artist depends on whether you are going for a studio position or you're going for a freelance position. Like you're positioning yourself as a freelancer.
Mm.
Because studios, they're generally looking for somebody who either fits their style or can produce produce a wide variety of styles.
Mm.
They're looking for somebody that can match what they're looking for. So someone who's very diverse in what they do would fit better for a studio position. Whereas a freelancer, you want to excel at one specific thing. You want to be the best at this. That's how you're going to be able to charge thousands of dollars for a piece, because you're the best at what you do for this category. You're the second best at what you do for this category. If you're not shooting for 1, 2, or 3 in a certain category of illustration, I'd advise you don't do freelance. Don't. Although it's just super difficult, and you'll most likely end up being frustrated with yourself, not landing the jobs that you want, or not landing the contracts that you're looking for. But I don't think that should discourage you from trying, because there's still ways to make money. As an artist who's just kind of up and coming, commissions are a great idea. I would even reach out to look into children's storybooks. A ton of great concept artists, comic book artists have come from creating children's books. And it's a great way to just kind of break into what it's like to work for a client. So, just don't be afraid. You are the creative. You are bringing solutions to people's problems, because a lot of people, they want their ideas and they want their stories out there. They want their stories published, but they can't do that fully without a creative visionary to establish that. And so you've got a ton of leverage when it comes to negotiating and pricing and all that. Maybe that's another time, but that's a very hard topic to talk about. But yeah, just know that when it comes to self growth and positioning yourself, you want to take the leverage off of your technical skill set, but more on your critical thinking, and the solutions that you can provide the people that are interested in your work.
Yeah, that's an interesting breakup. I would have thought initially at first blush that it would be the inverse of that. That if you wanted to go for a studio, you had to be hyper specialized and hyper focused and excel in one super narrow thing in 3D modeling or character art or this, and even in this style. But yet what you're saying, it makes a lot of sense. Where, I mean, at the end of the day, it's get good, right? Haha. But it makes a lot of sense from what you're saying from your perspective. If you're freelance, like, you have to, and I've struggled with this as well, where you have to have a very consistent brand. When people think of you, they have to think of the same thing. Like, everybody has to think of like, oh, that's Wes, he does this. oh, that's Josh. He has EmbodiedJosh, and EmbodiedJosh is this, right? Like when you're freelance, when you're your own company, when you're your own brand, when you're your own boss, when you're your own, when you're in the land of freelance and the internet, you have to be really specific, and you have to be really focused, and then you have to be really good.
Mm-hmm.
And that makes a lot of sense. And in my experience, like specializing it's like there's this. Well, there's already the tension of the topic we covered just before of, it's okay to branch out and have different things impact your art style and, cooking or sculpting or this or that, and have the patience for your life experience to shape and form who you are. And that's okay, and take multiple sources of inspiration. And that's good, and you should do that, while at the same time be hyper focused and nail in and like really like laser focus in on this one specific thing and be really, really good at that. And that seems at first blush to be in contrast with each other, because it's like, well, hold on, wait. A lot of artists and a lot of people on the internet are really well aware that they need to specialize, right? Because very, very, very few people can be an art generalist. Like that position exists. You can be an art generalist, and the closest mainstream art generalist job you can get is a concept artist, which I think is why it's so appealing, because it's the impression that you can just be generally creative in a bunch of different areas. But even within, concept art, they have different, environments or, whatever. Like, so how do you balance the need to specialize while giving yourself the freedom to explore and have other influences and passions and growing and learning opportunities, while knowing that you do need to specialize in order to have people be able to sink their teeth into you and know what you're about or know what you're for, and know, what they're getting into?
Yeah, that's a good question. I would say I'm still kind of in the generalist phase. I would say that for most artists that I've followed and I've seen explode, they started generalist. They started, very safe, until like something that they did just kind of popped, and it just trended. And now they just keep doing that because they know it's popular and people like it, and that's okay, and that's actually great.
Yeah.
And now they're known for, the thing that made them
popped.
popular in the first place. Yeah, the thing that popped. So that's a strategy you can do. You can just, keep yourself pretty loose. Still trying to, like what we did, steal from artists. Like, ooh, what if I added a little bit, of Pablo Picasso to my work, and then a little bit of, Max Greek or Lowish, and then just kind of slowly build up something that, and maybe even take artists out. It's like, this isn't really working for me. But just kind of, committed to an idea for a little bit, and then just being okay to just kind of let it go and make it something different. Always, you want to make sure that if you're a generalist, you want to be. It's not just that you can do everything. It's just that in your experience, you've been able to do things before. I don't know if I'm wording that correctly.
Yeah.
But I think what I'm trying to say is that just keep evolving. Keep being moldable. Be like clay. Be something that's hard enough, that has depth, but also like can be crafted into something. You want to be able to do that. Whereas a specialist is like, they're the best, but they're also like, they're the prettiest, out there. They're like the diamonds. They're pretty good. So, usually I tend to see artists specialize later in their careers once they've found what works for them, and they just kind of make it their own.
And I think that's exactly what I was going to bring up, because it sounds like what you're saying is that the specializing is a natural progression of what happens after you've taken the time and given yourself permission to go and explore and figure out what exactly it is that you want to do and what you like and what you don't, by mixing and matching the different artists, like you've said. And then by starting out general, the narrowing, specializing naturally happens over time as you refine your artistic sense and taste and sensibilities and life experience and everything like that. And again, I feel like that, I think that makes sense. I think that's encouraging. I think that's great. I would agree with you that it seems that the people who specialize are further along in their career and have taken the time to gather more sources from different places. I just feel like that young artists aren't given that permission from themselves or from society to take the time and explore. Because it's like,
Mm,
okay, you're 16, specialize now. Like for any, like there's no permission to explore. At least I didn't feel that way. Maybe other people feel like that they're
sure.
allowed to explore and but I always felt like because exploring doesn't get you likes. Exploring doesn't get you a lot of good traction, at least for me in my experience, because exploring is typically messy and juvenile and amateur, and like you're still growing and you're still discovering things. And I feel like that, yeah, that's a difficult position to be in. But I feel like that if you're able to enjoy the journey more while you're being broad and while you're still figuring yourself out and figuring out what you are artistically, I think that's the trick. I struggle with that,
Yeah.
but I mean, you seem to be a lot more comfortable operating in that space than most people I've talked to.
Yeah, well, see, and here's the tip for that too, and something that I found to be really helpful, and how this is kind of like where social media kind of comes in, because
Mm.
I don't know about you, but there's just been times where I've just been like, just scrolling, like, man, the artist is so good, man, I suck,
Yeah,
and then you're like,
all the
oh, I
time.
love that, and then you follow that person, and then you like look through his art, and you try to look like, okay, you scroll down and see like all of his older stuff, like, okay, where am I? Where am I? Where am I? And you're like, oh, bam, I'm like kind of around here. That was like 2002, like 2002. It's been, what is it now? 2020. So 18 years. Okay, so in 18 years, I could probably be that. Oh my gosh, 18 years, or something like that.
Yeah, yeah.
Um, but the social media has destroyed so many artists' motivations. I've seen it in my friends, and it's so destructive. It's destructive if you go to it. Social media can't be the place where you live. It's got to be the place where you work. And so what you need to
Mm.
do is you need to live on. You need to be on there enough to pull references and stuff that you like, and
Mm.
then quit out of it. You got to be done.
Run,
I would
just get
recommend.
out.
I'm not
Set
even
a
kidding.
set a timer. 15 minutes.
Get
That's it.
out.
That's your Twitter
Yeah,
allowance for the
no,
day.
I'm not even kidding. If you're drawing something, you're like, okay, I've got 5 minutes to find inspiration. Otherwise, I got to hop off and just start drawing. Like, I'm not even kidding. There's just been so many times where social media has been a distraction and then a deterrent to my creative process. So I found it really helpful to download this app. It's super free. It's called PureRef. You can literally copy. You go, if you're using a Mac, Command C, or if you're using a PC, Control C, whatever floats your boat. You do C, whatever C, and then whatever V into the software, and it'll just paste right on there. And it'll have like this board that always stays on top of whatever program it's used to draw on, whether it's Sci or Photoshop or Procreate, or I don't know if you can use that on the computer, but whatever. And it'll just house all of your references, and you can save them for later. But you don't have to be on social media. It's just a static place to put your
Mm.
stuff that you like. Because I know Twitter, Instagram, they've got like bookmarks. Those are great,
It's a bait.
but
It's a bait.
it's a bait.
Don't
really
do it.
is.
Don't do it.
Yes, you need to have your own library of stuff that you're working on. And PureRef is a great place to kind of, that's what I use. I'm on for 15 minutes, copy, paste, copy, paste, copy, paste. And then I close my browser. I'm like, okay, cool. I am done. I'm focused. I am ready to just draw.
Yeah.
And that's been helpful for me. So understand that social media is a platform where everybody's posting their best. They're posting most of the time like their best work, and they're showing off who they are at their best. And there's this lie that's like that kind of hits artists, where it's like, I have to be the best every time, otherwise I'm going to suck. And if I'm not producing the best quality of work, I'm just going to be nobody.
Yep.
And nobody wants to be a nobody. And I would just encourage you, you're not a nobody. Just understand that social media is not a place where humans interact. It's a workplace. It's a place where people are trying to network. It's not a place where I would say 99% of the time you're going to make a friend.
Yeah.
It's going to be a place where you're going to network and make professional relationships that will boost both of you guys in your careers. So you guys need to take off the mindset of like wanting to live and establish deep, meaningful friendships, and take the pressure off, and understand that this is a place where people are placing their best work, and take advantage of that. So steal all of the best work off of that platform, put it in your own library when you're drawing, and
Use it as a reference.
create offline. Create offline. Seriously, there's no need for you to be on Instagram and connecting with people while you're drawing. It's a distraction. Some people do it, but if you're serious about your career, if you're serious about wanting to get to the next quote unquote level, and pushing yourself, work offline. Work offline, or if you're wanting to chat with friends, and if you work better that way, chat with your friends, but get off social media.
Sure.
It's not going to help you other than just create a library of references. So yeah, that would be my tip for that response.
Yeah. Well, Wes, we're just about at time here. Do you have anything that you want to plug? Do you have anything that you wanted to share out? I think Steal Like an Artist is a great book. We can put that down below. I mean, you didn't write it, but like we talked about it a fair bit.
Yeah, I didn't write it.
So it's a great resource. Pretty popular. People might have heard of it. If you haven't, check it out. So we'll have Steal Like an Artist. That was mentioned a lot. Do you have anything that you wanted to share personally that you've been working on, or?
You know what? No, I'm creating just like you guys. I've had some work published, but I'm just like any other viewer. Honestly, I'm learning, I'm growing, I'm developing. So you can follow me on Instagram if you want.
The Instagram.
But,
all right, perfect. We'll have the Instagram.
It's totally cool. That's about it. Still learning, still growing.
Still learning.
Keep
there it is. Yeah. No, yeah. I was gonna say, for the social media thing of feeling like everybody has to post their best work, their god tier work. That's hard. That's hard to fight. I've struggled with that too. But you know what? Being able to see, I would still encourage people to post what they think. If you're proud of it, post it, right? Like, yeah, there's something to be said about having a professional, portfolio to show potential clients, right? Maybe that's your Instagram, maybe that's your ArtStation, maybe that's your personal website, right? And you can decide that for your own brand. You can decide that for your own how you want to structure and present yourself online. But I think that I've found value in posting and sharing where I'm at, to almost give solidarity to people with where they're at too, to almost be like the antidote to the toxic A+ 100%, polished everything on Instagram. So somebody can see something more rough and be like, oh, okay, thank God. Like that's recognizable. That's not something else I have to, live up to.
Yeah.
So if you could be that for somebody else too. You could be somebody's breath of fresh air. So definitely posting is still a good idea, I would think. Oh man. Well, Wes, thanks so much. Really appreciate you being here. We'll have your Instagram in the link below. I'll have Steal Like an Artist down there as well as a good resource. Thanks again for watching. I appreciate it. See you next time.